Good space time, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast, your source for educational insights into the Web3 universe and your connection hub to discovering those that contribute to building the decentralized world. Today, we are joined by Paul Sztorc from LayerTwo Labs. We touch upon the fiat currencies, the winning coin, East versus West, and North versus South. We discuss competitiveness, freedom, and moral progress. Finally, we talk about prediction markets, printing press, and the Titanic. If you enjoy our podcast, please share this episode onto your favorite social platform and help us spread Web3 values into the universe.
The prediction market, the more people involved, the more liquidity the market has, the more accurate it is, and the more people who are convinced. Consensus might work great for the blockchain, but for humans, it is the kiss of death. So I think that there will be more death in the L2 space. We already produce enough food to feed everyone. Many people die of starvation, but this is because of the logistics of the last mile problem.
Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast. Today I have Paul from LayerTwo Labs with me, and really glad and excited to hear what Paul has to share with us. So Paul, hi, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, very glad. Can I, I'm personally glad to have you on and ask you some questions that are probably related to your work, to Bitcoin and such. But apart from that, you were already recommended by a couple of guests I had on, so can't wait to...
Wow, really?
Who
recommended
So
me?
you have high... you see, well, at least Vlad.
Okay.
And I had a couple of more guests in the past year or so that have mentioned your name with regard to Bitcoin. So we're going to put the spotlight on you, Paul. Sorry,
Great.
I'm joking. Paul, before I kick off and start to annoy you with all my questions, could you, for the listeners, do like a brief intro of yourself, your work, and how did you get into Web3?
Well, I've been in Bitcoin for a long time. I started this company, LayerTwo Labs. The idea behind LayerTwo Labs is that eventually one coin will be able to do everything, and that coin is going to win. And so I am a sort of a Bitcoin maximalist in a way, in the sense that I think only one coin will win. I mean, I certainly hope it's Bitcoin. I think if Bitcoin drops the ball on features and on competitiveness, it will be something else. But whatever that is, I think it will eventually displace all the other crypto coins, and it will then start taking over the worst fiat currencies, and then eventually it will just take everything over. So I do believe in that maximalist logic. That was the old maximalist logic. So I come from like kind of even an earlier era, and I championed this idea, the side chain, or now I call it the Drivechain. And that is basically the idea that you have one coin, but it can travel to completely different pieces of software. And so now the software can be any shape or size, just like you could have any app on your phone or on your desktop computer. And so these would be like altcoins in that they are completely different software, but they're unlike altcoins in that there's no coin for each thing. They're all managing the same 21 million Bitcoin in this. So that's what the company is about. That's sort of what I'm about. The company LayerTwo Labs, we started it basically December of we've been like a year. We're almost like at the end of the second year. So we've been a year and a little, and we have produced, we have a test network with fake Bitcoin, but it's exactly resembles the real Bitcoin network. And on that network, you can send the coins to like a clone of Zcash, and you can get privacy there, or you can send it to a clone of Ethereum and do EVM smart contracts there. And you can send them to, a large block version is, of course, this famous block size dispute in Bitcoin. So I see myself as kind of almost transcending Web3, or maybe just zoomed out a little, where I think people should be able to do whatever they want, Web3 or large blocks or whatever, ZK snark, privacy. So that's kind of what the sidechain, Drivechain, LayerTwo Labs, Paul Sztorc's idea is about, this idea of tolerance among all these different pieces of software to unite everyone behind, the winning coin. And that's sort of, so that should probably be enough of an intro to get. I mean, I have all these websites: drivechain.info, layer2labs.com, truthcoin.info.
I'm gonna dig a little bit because you spoke about. I have some questions for you with regards to the beeps that you authored and the Bitcoin improvement protocols, of course. And I have some
Yes, I
questions with
authored
regards.
300 and 301.
But if you don't mind, before we go there, because like I said to you, before I hit the record button, then the show is mostly about the person rather than what they do, and we all are humans that choose some path in our life. Somebody chooses to go fight for the army, go be religious, go rebuild blockchains, whatever, fight the banks. It doesn't matter. We all choose. And I want to talk a little bit about Paul, before, like, not to get deep private, of course, but whatever, like, you can share about what you did before 42 Labs. What did you do before blockchain? Why did you get drawn to working with Bitcoin or trying to unite people over the idea that you just told me about? What's
Yeah, I
driving
think
you?
one thing that is pretty clear is you can look at, like, East Germany versus West Germany, North Korea versus South Korea, and you can just read you could read like Gulag Archipelago versus, like, the Great Gatsby or something. You can compare these worlds where the worlds are nothing, they're nothing alike at all. And one world is like hell on Earth, and the other world is not so bad. And you can think, like, every problem that anyone has ever faced, like, some people struggle so much with some problem, and if they just had, penicillin, or if they just had toothpaste, or if they just knew a little bit more about, maybe psychology, or, like, people get defensive. We have certain phrases that do a lot of work, just because our culture has accumulated all this knowledge. We know how to deal with when people feel shy or something. But for a long time, people didn't have any of this knowledge. They didn't have knowledge about how to build roads or get food. And so I think, like, that's the number one thing. And you think, well, okay, if people cooperate, people can work together. That is a huge upgrade. And that's what things like money do, and things like the law, things like culture. And so I just think, the internet, the computer, it can give us knowledge. It can protect our rights. It's very, the idea that you could just have all of your money in a 12-word seed phrase and memorize it and then just walk across the border. We want to increase the competitiveness of, governments and corporations. We want everyone to be competing for us. So that's big. For me, I'm also very interested in this idea of the prediction market that I championed for a really long time. But even in terms of blockchain prediction markets like Polymarket or whatever, I was writing about doing that on Bitcoin in 2012 and 2013. And I produced software for that, and I produced, research papers about that. So I'm very interested in that. And that is what drew me into this Blockstream's sidechain idea back in 2014. And then they dropped the ball on that and didn't do it and never released anything useful for that. So I had to do it myself. So that maybe gives you some idea of, like, I just think, just imagine any problem you've ever had. Everyone who's ever, wept for a dying loved one, or been confused about how to handle, like, a relationship problem or a health problem, or just bored or annoyed. And all those problems would be solved if we just had more knowledge, more human capital, more resources. And that's, it's like Hong Kong versus mainland China. It's like, we know the formula is freedom, consent,
Do
innovation.
you think it would help to solve all the world's problem? I'm going to be a bit devil's advocate here. I'm going to be a lot devil's advocate in this question. I have to warn you in advance. You think that it would help to solve the world's problem if America stopped spending $1 trillion on the defense budget and the army budget every year? To
Well,
start with, would be a
I don't know why
good
you would
start.
single that one out. I mean, you think that's too low or too high?
I think it's way too fucking high. I think it's.
It
I
is
think
pretty
I
high,
gotta be
isn't it?
honest.
But
I
it's
gotta.
very low compared to other things. It's not, isn't it like 1/4 or something of the federal budget, to say nothing of the state and local?
Fuck the federal budget. It's the fact that what I see. When I gotta be. I'm gonna try. Like I said, I'm gonna be those advocates. So I'm pretty much the same length as you in this industry since 2011, 2012, roughly, when I came in, and I've been long through all of this, like, okay, we struggle. What I came to realize, and what I'm kind of like want to ask you, is that, no matter how and what we do, as there is a problem with humans. That's what I came to realize. It's not the problem with technology. It's not a problem with, I don't know, anything else. Money. Well, there is a problem with money. There is a problem with technology. There's a problem with a lot of things. Problem with government. But at the end of the day, there is a problem with greed and lack of responsibility. And, at the end of the day, when humans say, well, we're going to solve all the world's problem by fixing 1, 2, 3. Why not start with the simple things? Why not start with the simple things? Like, we know that wasting $1 trillion on the state budget, will probably, if it was directed somewhere else, like towards space exploration, probably would have helped a lot already. But it's not. So what I'm trying to ask you is, do you think that, by fixing technology or fixing the unbanked system or bank system, whatever you believe in, we will manage to solve human greed and the lack of responsibility that humans take?
But that's not really the criterion, is it? I mean, we will never reach a state where we have solved every problem. But that doesn't mean that we're climbing the ladder. You know what I mean? Like we're all ignorant subsistence farmers. On day one, the species was in a horrible state. And in fact, I think a lot of people think that the human race almost went extinct several times and even went down to like maybe 400 people or something at one point, because there's just not enough genetic variation. And I'm not sure if that's true, but something like almost all of the cousin and sister species of Homo sapiens all went extinct, So that was a pretty bleak outlook on day one. And now people have different problems. They have like the first world problems, like what do I watch on Netflix, or someone somewhere is being greedy, like what you were saying, or that the defense budget is, 1 trillion. Like, it's a first world problem. And in the future, we can only hope that the problems they solve are different. They may be more about like art, or like what color a certain planet should be when they create it out of space matter they dig out of the sun or something. So and people always disagree about what to do next. I think that is also just normal, and that fact, I think we should all accept that we will always disagree. But again, that doesn't mean that we should go back to the Aztecs and say we need more rain. So we should what they would do is they would chain a bunch of children together. They would smash like iron or hooks into their faces and chain them all together, and then drag them up the pyramid and then and gut them all and kill them all. And that's what they would do to bring rain to the farmers. Whereas today we have pipes.
Well, the Nazis, were doing, like, what I'm trying to say is that, we didn't change as a society much because, if slavery, Holocaust, those things were legal, so like what I'm trying to say
but
here,
you wouldn't say that we haven't, people's attitude towards, for example, I was about to say the Jews, but I was going to say
the Holocaust.
I was about to say the Jews, but distressingly, there has been a bizarre rise of anti-Semitism recently, which is distressing and bizarre. But I do think what's unusual is that it is met. Certainly if you go back 200 years, this type of thing would happen all the time, and everyone would just look the other way and just be like, well, whatever, they're probably up to something.
What's happening today?
Whereas today, more people do. I know it is. I was very surprised by that. But I don't think that actually, when push comes to shove, normal people in America and even people who are going to vote based on this issue, I don't think those people look at the students protesting for Hamas and say, oh, I'm going to vote for that. I think they will just quietly ignore that, and then they will vote against it. And so there will be no actual change in the official policy of the 1 trillion defense budget that to uphold basic Western values and like anti-terrorism and just complaining about a country existing and just like. So I don't think but yeah, that is a weird thing. Mostly we have made enormous moral progress, I think, and people don't put up with things that would have been common. Even things like bullying or like parents beating their children. Many of these things, the opposite positions were taken for granted. The idea that you could just kill all the Jewish people was normal part of life in Europe for a very long time. Now that would be considered grotesque. It is true that I don't understand why there is a subculture that has moved extremely in the other direction. But my guess is that it's because that subculture is so defective and irrational that people have just they've stopped trying to reason with it, and so actually that's their own problem. And I think if when push comes to shove, they will have wished that they were more open-minded, let's say.
I guess that, you know, what I was referring to wasn't so much, even though the anti-Semitism, of course, you know, I haven't served once upon a time in the Israeli army many years ago, you know, it is kind of close to me, but I'm not that kind of person. I think it was a mistake what I did, but what I was referring to more was, you know, that for the last 100 or so years, for example, I forget the word all the time. It's on Wikipedia. It's a German word, a very long one of those like 30 letters words, a phenomenon,
Yes.
which means...
What is it? What is it about?
Yeah, I'm going to explain what it is. I cannot remember the word. Basically, what it means that, you know, as for the last 100 years, we are aware as a first, you know, as a, let's say, white dominant society, we are aware of roughly 1 billion people, 1 billion, that's roughly today still 15 or so, 17% of the world population dying yearly of 5 illnesses. That is hepatitis B, hepatitis C, malaria, tuberculosis, and something else. The cure to each one of those per person is roughly $2 per year per person, now per illness. So let's say $10 per person per year. So that is a lot less than a fucking $1 trillion. What I'm trying to say, the problems that we are having in the world are not the problems of the first world countries. Those are the problems that we choose as first world countries to close our eyes to whatever the fuck is happening around us, single out a few problems and say, well, those are all big issues, but let's not look at the big things like that's happening, like 15% of the world population dying per year because we decide to build a tank or a plane, you know. So
Let me go back to your earlier, like, because you asked like a big question about, I say I'm going to solve all these problems. What I don't say is I'm going to solve all the problems. I'm just trying to say, listen, I'm alive right now. I look around. What problems do I think? Here's a list of the problems I think I can solve. Sort that list by importance. Okay, this is the most important problem I think I could maybe help solve. Okay, I'll do that. That's pretty reasonable. I think that we were talking about like we're never going to solve all the problems. The
let's go back to
list
this.
will keep going, you know, and that's sort of a good thing because I'm not sure what would exactly happen, like what it would mean if we had reached a perfectible state. I don't know. Like that would be, that would almost be its own problem because then it would be like confusing as to like that would have its own mysteries, which you could call problems. So
For sure. I
just
agree. No, for
forget about
sure.
that for now. Now you have this assertion that the $1 trillion we spend on defense is spent mistakenly, but I think no one really knows if that is correct. Neither you or I really know. We don't know. Like maybe things would be way, way worse. You know what I mean? If maybe the U.S., let's say that number was 0 instead, and then we could have many authoritarian, you know, regimes around the world taking over their neighbors. You know, they are inherently the authoritarians cannot grow as quickly as the free countries. So their only option to stay where they are is to expand and sort of coerce people.
I do agree with you that, you know, that you know, solving all the world's issues is definitely not on the agenda. Here I agree with you. So I'm gonna go a little bit back and then ask you
One
about one
reason
of...
I'm interested in prediction markets is because we could make these contracts, so we could improve the rational discourse on whether or not the 1 trillion is the right number. And you can make a special type of contract that I have tried to popularize. It was invented by Robin Henson, but I tried to popularize it with, and I think I succeeded somewhat in Vitalik bought it hook, line, and sinker, and the Ethereum community knows a little bit about it. These multidimensional prediction markets, you say, okay, if we increase defense spending, what will happen to something else, like the value of all the land or the life expectancy of the earth or something. So you can then maybe start to get a handle on what you might think when it's like a thermostat. You think maybe we've gone too far. We're hitting diminishing returns or we're hitting negative returns. Things are getting worse. We spend more on this, things get worse. And even more to the point, the prediction market gives everyone the same set of prices. So this is at least the beginnings of how to convince everyone else. You've learned the truth. Oh, we're spending too much on XYZ. But now you have to convince everyone else. But prediction markets solve both problems. They also have a superior ability to scale. Conversation scales n squared. It doesn't scale very well. You have to have a conversation with each person has to talk to everyone else. That doesn't work. And then you have things like this show, which is like a podcast type show where you have media elites get a reputation like Joe Rogan. But even that scale is what you might call like log n times n or something. You have a few competing elites, and then they choose who to interview and they choose who to believe. The prediction market, the more people involved, the more liquidity the market has, the more accurate it is, and the more people who are convinced ultimately by that. So it's a superior idea that it actually works better the more people are involved. So in a world of 8 billion people. So you may be right about the defense budget being wrong, and maybe it should be spent on hepatitis B. The one thing to think about is it's probably true that everything you said about a lot of people die of hepatitis B. Hepatitis B cure is very cheap, less than $2. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we could save those people's lives for $2. There's a lot of other missing pieces of like distributing and administering the medicine. And maybe if you give them that, they die from hunger 4 weeks later. I don't know the facts, but I do think it's kind of implausible, right? Because people prefer being alive. The parents prefer having their children be alive. And if it were really the case, you would think that there would be some kind of some kind of deal that people could cut. If it was just this $1-2 thing, a single time, you would think that it would. But then oftentimes you investigate these matters and it is a different story. For example, we already produce enough food to feed everyone. Many people die of starvation, but this is because of the logistics of the last mile problem. It's very easy to get the food almost anywhere, but to get it the very last mile, if there's no roads and there's no police and there's no safety and there's no, like electricity, there's no gas stations, it just can't get there. And so I think it's not always obvious what's best for everyone. That's certainly something people disagree about.
I am definitely going to move to prediction markets because I definitely disagree with what you say here. So let me move a little bit to prediction markets there, but it's good to disagree. And I think that, I think alternatives is definitely why, for example, this industry attracts a lot of smart people, in my opinion, is being able to see the amount of alternatives and hear them and then make your own decision for whatever information you think is right. Now about prediction markets, I like for all the listeners, definitely guys, please check the show notes. If you haven't familiar with the BIP 300 or BIP 301, you will find links and read about them. And some of them happened a while ago. So we're talking 17, 19, if I'm not mistaken. But it's interesting, prediction markets, because in my opinion, oracles and prediction markets, I myself wrote a piece about the same time, roughly 2017, 18, on the fact that, in my opinion, prediction markets are actually the sort of cleanest example of a P2P communication without having, anybody else in between, because technically anything can be a prediction market. Now, what can you, for the listeners and for myself, in your own 2 words, you talked about a prediction market and how it can be beneficial. How is that idea currently, since you have came up with it, implemented or not implemented into the Bitcoin protocol, and what is happening with it?
These are very different issues of I champion this idea of the prediction market in abstract, and I think it's the best thing since, basically, I think to me, it's like the printing press. It's like writing, it's like spoken language, writing, the printing press, the internet, like prediction markets. So I think this is the next big media thing. That's a very different conversation from how is it actually implemented in our current industry, and what changes would I make? What I've decided to do, I have made lots of presentations about this topic, and a lot of people have had some success doing something that I advocated. I'm not saying that they got the idea from me, but in the past I said we should have completely decentralized blockchain prediction markets on Bitcoin. I said that 2012, 2013. But I also said we should have someone can kind of cut the corner of the Oracle and just do it, and they can create. I actually told many times we should have like oracle.bitcoin.com or something like that. There was this project Reality Keys by Edmund Edgar and some other things. So I think you could cut the corners and just start doing it to just get the word out there about this institution. And some people have done that, including, I guess, Polymarket would now be the sort of the bigger one. I have a different conception of how to make this idea work, having seen countless ideas fail. And I even wrote like a little paper, like the graveyard of prediction markets or something, because this idea is tried very often and then it fails. And I have just a huge like amount of like background knowledge and like notes about that. You can go to bitcoinhivemind.com, which is like my site, and I have like all kinds of papers there. And so what I kind of feel like I want to do now is just build the software exactly the way that I think it should look and operate, and then try that, because I have had mixed results in explaining what to do to other people. But I realize it's not a great answer for anyone who's listening. Will just be kind of confused by that. But some things that are underemphasized are the multidimensional markets they are confusing, but I think people will figure them out. And when they do figure them out, they will like them a lot. For example, they allow you to bet in US dollar terms or in ETH terms or in BTC terms. You can just switch by adding that as a dimension to the markets. So that would be big. But the other thing is with the market scoring rules that people have started to use, again, after I sort of suggested this, Robin Hanson invented this thing, logarithmic market scoring rule, and then it sort of passed into the Ethereum community. These allow you to just stack all these dimensions together without losing any liquidity. So the user experience can be made to not even notice that these are there, and now you can bet on all kinds of combinations of events. So the idea of this is like, is one event related to another event? You say, well, actually, if what in America, if Donald Trump is elected, or if the red team, if the Republican Party is elected, will the price of Bitcoin go up relative to the Democratic Party? And you just see at a glance. You can just see. There's no longer a need to debate, or you just say, okay, well, if I vote this way, that will be better for the Bitcoin investment. What will be better for the stock market? What will be better for the anything else that you can measure? It doesn't have to be financial. So that's the key. Another thing that is related to that is the idea of liquidity. This is always killing the prediction markets, but it's actually easy to convert the liquidity problem into just something of just lacking money, and then it's very easy to solve with a different thing. I realize this is kind of not a great explanation, but that's part of why I think I just need to make the software as a kind of a demonstration.
It's good. I think that, for people who are not familiar with it, what you're explaining will help. And then, of course, if anybody wants to check it out, they just go and follow the links, like I said, and read the story, because there is a lot of implementations of oracles and prediction markets, and not just on Ethereum, but on various ecosystems and outside of blockchain as well. So I definitely highly suggest for people who are listening to this and curious, please go and check it out. I have a different question for you about L2s now. Being sort of a champion in, one of the initial ideas of L2, I guess, or from, I can see how from what you have, been saying long time ago, some of those L2 ideas could have came up. Today, like, I'm going to, once again, be devil's advocate here, but I want to hear your opinion. Like, L2s have been around Bitcoin, especially, for a long time, with Lightning Network is the most famous one. Now, I don't know how whoever is listening to this think what they think about Adam Back. Unfortunately, well, facts in the eyes. It's a centralized piece of shit software today, at least semi-centralized, with that hasn't really done what it's set out to do. And the same goes for Ethereum. They have like we whatever you want to say, there is about 70 L2s now on Ethereum or something like this. It's ridiculous as fuck. So the question is like the whole L2 like thing, how do users choose? Do they just follow the same rules as with L1s, like go by the longest chain and see which L2 generates more, I don't know, revenue or more volume or whatever? How do users understand an L2 is good to use? And if there is many, how do they, decide which one is better for them or will keep their money safe, sort of?
Yes. Well, of course, the idea of the layer 2 goes back to this this model of the internet where there's like the data that there's like layers where there's like physical layer, like a wire is plugged in, like the Ethernet cables are connecting the two computers. And then there's like eventually, so these layers, there's like you sort of electricity flowing, is there data going back and forth. Then there's like connection, like, so like two compute, like you and I, our computers are connected, not directly, we're connected very indirectly. But the whole premise of the internet, the packet switching, is that you and I have a connection that will survive even if many of the routes along the way get interrupted. Someone shuts a computer off. We don't even notice because the packets are streaming across. So the idea is that the internet scales in these layers, and that Bitcoin can only do 7 transactions per second. Everyone needs to have all the blocks and the entire history. So that's not ideal at all. That will only be one layer, and then we'll have a layer above. It's called layer 2, but really, of course, it would be like layer, like whatever, like 18 or something, in the whole scheme of it. Just everything in the world is built with layers. So that's just the layers story, if in the abstract. But specifically, many of the layer 2s today they're just not very good. So just because something's a layer 2 doesn't mean it's good. Like, if you go to a bar and you order a drink, you order a few drinks, you have a bar tab, they keep track, and then they don't charge you. They don't charge your card until the end. That's kind of a layer 2, but you can see that is something of it's sort of a cheating. It's like it's just assuming that it sort of spoils the problem in a way. It says, well, how do we? Well, we'll just have one guy do it. Have one guy just keep track of it all. And then whatever he says goes, right? Or if you just run out the door and call the credit card company and say that my card was stolen, then many of these L2s are something like that, where it's just the money all goes to one person, or a multi-sig, which is a fancy way of saying one person in practice, because it's just like one organization of people. So they'd say that this matters, but in reality, it makes no real difference. Since the average person has no idea how these keys got to people. They don't know. Just key ceremony. No one knows. No one cares. So just because something's an L2 doesn't mean that it is a good design. My view is actually that almost all the L2's designs will also fail and be deleted, and only one or two will actually remain in use. And this is actually kind of similar to how in the internet stack, we have different things, like we have Wi-Fi in addition to Ethernet cable, and it is possible to have other cables, coaxial cable type of a thing. But really, there are only so many, it's not like there's like 50 different Ethernet cables, at different types, different shapes, and they have different plugs. Really, it's like one idea is just the best for that layer, and it will win, and the others will lose. And I think, in particular, any idea that does not pass its fees down faithfully to the L1 miners will probably lose. So that would include all the centralized ones, unless they have some kind of way of tallying, and reporting faithfully and guaranteeing that they will report. It's like as if the bartender is going to keep track and say to Visa, listen, this was actually 8 purchases, not 1. So I'm going to pay you 8 times as much fees, and it's just on the honor system. So I don't think that's going to work. And the things like Lightning, Liquid, the fees actually go to a wallet controlled by Blockstream. So as it's currently set up, they pay 0% of the fees. As Lightning Network, as it's currently set up, pays 0% of the fees. When people join and leave the L2 and they lift or fall, they sometimes called peg in, peg out, but that's awkward. So I think lift to the L2 or withdraw from the L2 back to the L1. That they pay the L1 fee, but that's because those events happen on L1. So I think what we need is the L2 that is incentive compatible, because then the miners will be cheering it on. They make more. They know that they'll make more money when the L2 is more successful. I think those are the ones that are viable, including the Drivechain, the BIP 300, 301. So that's what I think actually will win, and I think all these other L2 designs will probably not survive. They're not only will they not, including the Lightning Network. I think the Lightning Network we've seen, it always had a lot of theoretical questions, but now we have seen like many of these problems have come to light, and then many of the fake custodial Lightning, which is just fake Lightning. It's not real. It doesn't have Bitcoin actually or Lightning at all. It's just a front end interface for like a server. It's like the bar tab in Extremis. And some of those, like Wallet of Satoshi, got pulled from the App Store, so those have just been killed. So I think that there will be more death in the L2 space, and I'll just be. So yes, I think those will all be gone. I think there will just be one model that survives eventually.
I saw yesterday, I think, on Twitter. I'm sure it was yesterday. So today, just again for the listeners, like it was 15 of September when I saw this on Twitter. And what do you think about what I saw was the first, at least, okay, this is the advertisement. I have to say, I didn't go and check like, the documents or the website even. I just saw this tweet of big account, the first layer 3 for Bitcoin. And they were deadly serious. These guys were like, we are, what do you think of that? Do you think it's viable in the future, or you think those ideas of layer 3, 4, 27 is already like,
No, of course, there will be, it's trivial to add the layers actually, but they have to be good. So that's sort of what I was trying to emphasize with the bar tab example, is that you could imagine a situation where like two different people open a bar tab. They'll go to the same bar, and then one person, this often happens with friends, one person says, oh, I'll get this round, and then says, I'll get the next round of drinks. That's like a layer 3, really. Because you're saying what we will put on the tab is, so it's trivial to actually add more layers. But the problem is, are the layers any good? Now, when you're interacting with a friend that you've known for a long time and that you plan on interacting with for years afterwards, this is called the Folk theorem in game theory, about the repeated interactions impose discipline because you have so much to lose by betraying the person. You have a friend that you like, and then that you'll lose if you betray them. And so this induces people to act with your best interest in mind, and it thus folds the field of game theory out. It says like, you're no longer in an adversarial situation. You and the other person are on a team now because you'll interact with them. So in that case, the trust is warranted. And similarly for the bar tab, it's just, since you're physically there and everyone sees you and you have like a reputation in the town and they don't want to call police, and it's not worth it for such small amounts. So when you have the trust, you can use trust and you cheat. But you cheat, you don't need to solve the problem of trust. But it's there's no such thing as the first layer 3. There would have been many such instances of people agreeing they have Lightning channels open and they're debugging the software and they say, oh, can you send me some testnet Lightning coins or something? So there is no such thing as having the first layer 3 or layer 4 or whatever. That is not a good criterion. The only criterion is, does the design solve a problem that is unsolved?
And I guess, like, you spoke in, you've wrote BIP 301, and you mentioned
Yes. blind merge mining, yes.
Merged mining, yeah, which is, of course, a logical economical incentive. Now, today, I want to ask you a question. Today, again, once in your feeling or so, in your opinion, I mean, your surroundings, what role, because merge mining, I'm not talking about, of course, merge mining for layer 2, is like merge mining in general. The whole idea of merge mining has existed at least since, I don't know, 2014,
2010,
15, since I remember it. But
Satoshi invented merge mining before he left, and he even co-developed the first altcoin, which was Namecoin, and Namecoin has been merge mined on the Bitcoin network
Namecoin, yes.
continuously since 2011. Miners can still get an extra little bit. I don't know what it is now. It used to be like the Bitcoin block used to be worth like $7,000, and the Namecoin block was worth like $5. So now the Bitcoin block is worth, who knows? It's like, I guess it would be worth like, basically like $200,000-$300,000, something like that. And the Namecoin block is worth, I don't know how much, probably like a similar proportion. I don't know.
That was actually the question, though. It was like, what role today is merge
Very
mining?
small,
Like,
but
I mean, you kind of
in the
started to speak
future, it
about
will
it,
be life or death, and it will be much more than 99% of miner revenues will come from merge mining, is my prediction.
Okay.
So my prediction is just that we haven't reached the point where the merge mine chains generate the fees. This is just, I think this is inevitable, and in fact, it's the hour is nigh. But this is so far a fringe point of view, but I think there's no reason why it would not. I mean, miners get more money in return for doing nothing. Users get the ability to transact at a lower fee. The exchange rate risk is insulated from them. They get to unite under one project that will win, thus reducing the risk of the whole thing failing. These are just obvious, like, good ideas to me. The fact that we had more than 60% mining participation with merge mining back when it was only $5 of like a $7,000 package, that suggests that when it will eventually be more than 100% of the L1 total fee revenue or total block reward, as the subsidy halves, there will be only fees. So then there will be enormous adoption of merge mining. And once people figure it out, once the miners are very, no offense, they're very inept as far as what happens with the software. They're very skilled when it comes to finding cheap power, working hard. They have their own arena that they fight in, and they compete against other miners to mine. So they're very good at that. But they don't really realize that these things are possible that will grow the pie enormously for the whole industry. They just don't. I from firsthand experience, I have spoken to many of the mining pools and their CEOs and their CTOs, and they just don't understand it yet. Some of them do, of course, but I think this is just in the process of changing. It's just on the cutting edge.
I would tend to agree. I mean, as much as the developers listening to this will hate me, but it's kind of like developers in trading. You have your own arena, but when it comes to trading, unfortunately, most developers tend to. There is a lot of funny stories, I know. Anyways, very sad but funny stories, but we will not go into them. But about merge mining and I want to ask about security and about consensus. So because in proof of stake, for example, there is slightly similar to merged mining, which is shared security, I guess, and is the concept where validators, can be hired by smaller networks from bigger networks, and but it hasn't also code on that much. Now I'm wondering. Now I am actually a self-hosted bare metal validator. We have our own equipment. We don't go via data center, so I kind of understand the game, but. Well, at least I like to think so. But, the question is, why do you think still? Because what you say has every single sense to it, right? Merge mining, more profit. Shared security, more profit. Less work, more profit. Why doesn't it catch up until now? Neither. And we talk about merge mining, of course,
Yes.
Stick with that. But
I didn't understand exactly what you meant. You mean the idea of a version of proof of stake what specifically are you asking about?
So basically what I'm asking about is why you think it doesn't catch on, the idea of merge mining until now, or shared security, because I was just saying that shared security in proof of stake is very similar, but there is also lack of adoption, so to speak. I mean, it's quite a recent thing still in proof of stake, but what I'm trying to say, in my opinion, merge mining is the first logical step if I was a miner or if I'm a validator, those are logical steps. Now, why they don't catch up until now?
Yeah, I don't know, but I do
I'm
have
clueless to
some
that, so I'm asking
guesses.
you.
I mean, I certainly spend a lot of time in the Bitcoin community, and I am very familiar with Bitcoin culture. Bitcoin culture, as you probably know, it just at this point presumes that Bitcoin will be the winning coin, and it doesn't need anything else. It doesn't even need adoption. Like those people come crawling back, when they want to get into the Citadel or something. So there's an enormous amount of overconfidence and complacency and just total obsession with the idea that Bitcoin is perfect the way that it is, and it's just the price is going to keep going up. And most people have bought into that, or at least I think that it's even worse where most people subconsciously believe it, where they don't even really realize that this is what they're doing, which I think is truthfully the case, including many large miners, mining pools. I think they wake up in the morning and they just think, okay, I hope what's the latest, Michael Saylor presentation, or what's the latest meme that will pump the coin. They don't even realize. I think they don't even realize that they're doing it. And it would never even occur to them to say, like, how can we get more adoption? Because more adoption means more transaction fees, which means more revenue. It means more notoriety for the coin. They just don't think that way. So the culture, as is usually the case, the culture is operating on a subconscious level for many people. They don't even realize, why are they going to church? Why are they going to the NFL? Why is it important that their kids go to school? They don't even really realize why they're doing it. There could be really good reasons, but I do think the Bitcoin culture is not set up to reward merge mined transaction fees, because that would involve a different chain, and they think that the chain they have is perfect. So that's my guess, I would say, is the current headwind.
It's a very interesting, I think it probably has a lot to, I mean, you saw me agreeing there, so I definitely think that it's growing from there, because I can tell you that I know at least one very person who introduced me to crypto. This was many years ago, so 2011 roughly. And the person, went in cycles of Bitcoin altcoins. But today, what you said describes, I think, that person perfectly. They are not aware of the fact that they believe in that. They lead their life, but everything they say when you talk to this person just keeps on, kind of piling up on that idea. It's perfect. It doesn't need any improvement. It will finish like that. And yeah, it's a weird thing. And this is actually, I guess, kind of like my last question. We're coming up to an hour here, but to ask you a little bit about that, again, in your own words, you mentioned it at the very beginning of the conversation, the Bitcoin maxi attitude. And at least from my perspective, somebody, who at least I like to think I've been here long enough to see different behaviors. In my opinion, I see a shift. I see a change, a small change. There is, of course, the traditional Bitcoiners, who okay, guys, we are here and nothing will move us. We are a wall, between East and West Berlin, and nothing will break us. No Soviet Union will collapse here. And then, you see now on Twitter, especially, unfortunately, Twitter still being, number one kind of platform to get our news about crypto until 2024. But you see that, you kind of feel that there are people, for example, I'm having you on, I've had Vlad on, I've had a couple of more people who are proclaimed Bitcoiners on the show who don't speak solely about Bitcoin. They're starting to sort of expand, whatever they think can be beneficial to the Bitcoin network itself and for crypto in general. Now, the question in short, do you think that attitude of the maxi logic, is it changing? And if it is, or if it's not, what do you think where is it going, or what's going to happen with it in 5 years? I don't know, a general
I think it has gone wrong, and I think it will be fixed before, I don't think even 5 years. I think 3, I don't think it can go the way it's going for another 3 years. So maybe I'm wrong about that. But I don't think so. The world of software is just too competitive. The original maximalist view that, I would have proudly adopted and sort of still adopt, it's like 2014, 2015 and earlier, because of course it started to shift. This is like the block size war sort of shifted it, I think, is the issue. But basically the old view was something like, there's nothing wrong with, like, it's like we were all in different plots of land or something. It was like, here we are in Bitcoin. We have a lot of work to do to make Bitcoin a success. But there's nothing inherently wrong with this plot of land. It's not like we should move to somewhere else. We'll just have to start over there. We have to start over, build the power plant. It's like we're playing SimCity or something. We have to build the power plant. We have to build the roads. We have to build the skyscrapers. We have to build the universities. And we have this big project here. So, but it's not like if we just move to Litecoin, it'll be better because of the faster block time. That everyone rightly called that view out as just being a flimsy pretext for pumping the Litecoin price, and it had nothing to do. And of course, it raised far more questions than it answered. Like, if we move to Litecoin, why not move to something else? And if the shorter block time is good, why not make it like 1 second block times? And there were people who did this. It was like Litecoin, Feathercoin, etc., on and on and on. Dustcoin. This went on and on, exactly as you would expect. Similarly with Bitcoin Cash, it was like, okay, the block size limit is raised, but then why not raise it again? And then as Bitcoin SV, it was like, why not just completely remove it? And, why not hard fork more times? So this was the old critique that all of that stuff was just nonsense, which I really kind of think it was. But that never meant like that the city on day one is already perfect, and that because no one would believe that, because back then it was so small that you couldn't, it was again subconscious. Everyone, when you showed up, you looked around and you saw, okay, this place has potential, but right now no one has heard of us. CNBC is laughing at they ever mentioned Bitcoin. There were sites, there was like, I think it was called like bitcoincharts.com or something. It had a little news panel. And if anyone mentioned Bitcoin anywhere in any kind of like internet article or whatever, they would show up there, and you would like refresh the page hoping for like maybe one a week, one a day, and you'd refresh the page and you'd say, is anyone out there going to mention Bitcoin? So it was so small back then that no one would say, oh, we take it for granted that it's going to be hyper Bitcoinization and there's going to be the Citadel. Everyone was worried all the time that it would just go to zero, or that they would just like, no one would care, or that something else. So again, it was subconscious, that the idea that we're going to have to fight to make this a success. And then it achieved more success. And then a bunch of people who joined, in the last 3 years, who don't know anything, they kind of just think, okay, the pitch to them was just buy this coin and you'll make a lot of money. So that's kind of like why the Maxi idea has completely shifted to that. And that won't work. That is the unsinkable Titanic, so to speak. That is the hubris. That is, I compare it to Star Wars Episode 1 or whatever. Where everyone thought they thought Rome would never fall. They thought the Titanic would never sink, and everyone thought Star Wars Episode 1 would be like a huge success because George Lucas was personally involved, et cetera, et cetera. He had all the CGI that he could want, and of course, it's basically terrible. So this overconfidence and complacency is exactly what doesn't work, and it is inevitable that it will produce mistakes that will either kill the project or just have the culture be defeated. You already see it to some extent, where the ordinal stuff was an attempt to break away from the death cult of like, this is already perfect complacency, and just do something fun, something that was new and fun, and that actually involved using the software. Because related to the L2 point is that the more things that the good model can do, if there's good software out there that does certain things, then the fewer scams people can get away with shilling. Because they say, here's the thing that already works. You can't sell someone like a word processing scam if they have Microsoft Word and Google Docs and all this stuff's already out there for free. So the ordinals people were just saying, okay, we want to use the software and have fun. And this was initially met with hatred and revulsion by many of the loud cultural people. But since it had real users and it paid fees, the miners were just like, okay, we're collecting the fees. And also it was like, it would sell tickets to like the conferences. So the conference people realigned to promote this type of thing, to promote actual users with actual customers. A lot of people, for example, I mean, maybe I shouldn't list the examples, but a lot of people have said, like one example was that like Safety and Amos pulled out of the Bitcoin conference, saying that he didn't want, because it was shilling junk, which was what he meant, like the ordinals, and it's no longer consistent with his brand or whatever. But the conference ended up doing very well and eventually attracted, the Donald J. Trump as the speaker. So it became enormously prestigious. And then all those people had to kind of come crawling back and say, that they wanted to bury the hatchet. I don't think Mr. Amos was one of them, but I know a lot of people. I just know from talking to the organizers of the I've been involved with that conference ever since it was created. And so I just know some of the people there, and they told me all about how these people angrily left before over this ordinals drama. Remember, this was like some big issue like 2 years ago. The fact that that Eric Wall was allowed on stage in a wizard costume. This is like, the guy was foaming at the mouth, swearing on Spaces, saying that this is ruining the generational wealth of Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is something, for his kids to like save them from dying in poverty, and that how can they disrespect him by allowing him up in a wizard costume, and just crazy people. And then that's revealed for how absurd it is, and then normal people don't want to interface with that. And so then nature, it sort of heals itself when the conference is a big success, more of a success because people are actually doing things they like and having fun. Then those people come crawling back and they say, I don't know what came over me. So we're going to hear a lot of that, I think.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope that, we keep on progressing as an industry, no matter what we do, no matter, whether we're talking about, merge mining, shared security, less maximalism, or more prediction markets, and more, more decentralization or whatever. I hope that we keep progressing in all directions. And I want to thank you very much, Paul, for finding the time for the hour. And I hope even the disagreements, we can still see that as an industry, our goal is definitely to keep on going, not just to disagree.
Yes, disagreement is good. A consensus might work great for the blockchain,
Yes.
but for humans, it is the kiss of death. So
Yes.
Thank you for your polite disagreement.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Paul. Please don't hang up just yet. This is just a goodbye for the listeners. So everybody else, thank you for tuning in, and see you next week. This content was created by the Citizen Web3 Validator. If you enjoyed it, please support us by delegating on citizenweb3.com/staking and help us create more educational content.